The old guard scoffs at high-tech wizardry. Imagine the scene. A smoky, beer-stained bar somewhere in the dusty region of cycling's memory, where the ghosts of past champions have gathered. Jacques Anquetil is pouring a glass of something wood-aged. Eddie Merckx is polishing his elbows in disdain, and Bernard Hinault leans back in his chair, chewing a stub of a cigarette, shaking his head at the very idea that a rider might rely on power meters, never mind AI or other wizardry. And in the corner, Miguel Indurain, ever composed, ever calm, sips his milk or whatever old school cyclist drank and murmurs, "We used to ride by guts, not algorithms." Yes, I have dramatized slightly, but so do legends when defending the good old days. These are the men, the quote legends, whose prime spanned the 1960s through to 1999, who conquered the Tour de France with legs, lungs, and sheer will, and perhaps a stiff drink at certain moments. They might argue that today's cyclists are more engineers than athletes, caught in a technological net that gives them unfair advantages that were never available to the brave souls of yesteryear. Indurain, 5-time Tour champion from 91 to 95, is often portrayed as the most reasonable among the people. He is quoted as saying, "I inherited that calm from my father. You know, you wait for good or bad weather, you harvest, but working is something you always need to do." That quote, innocent enough, is often twisted by nostalgia lovers to imply, back in my day we just worked, none of this data nonsense. Whether Indurain truly made statements specifically condemning power meters and training software is harder to trace, but in the mythos of legends versus tech, he is often conscripted as a reluctant general. So what do these legends claim is wrong with modern cycling? Firstly, you've got over-complication. They insist that riding should be simple. One bike, 2 wheels, 1 pair of legs, and the race. The rest is just noise, data, screens, graphs, real-time coaching. They also bring up unfair advantage. They argue that riders now benefit from tech leaps, lighter frames, marginal gains, integrated systems, and they would have never had these in their era. Another one is loss of character. In their telling, the grit, the suffering, the tough men have been replaced by scientists wearing lycra and obsessing over their watts. Next, we have the erosion of romance. They say that you can no longer picture a heroic solo ride. They claim everything is calculated, optimized, and sterilized. Privilege masquerading as merit. Implicitly, they say, quote, "We didn't have access to all of this. Our wins were harder, our suffering purer. Today's guy could pedal in slippers and win." By contrast, Tadej Pogačar, the 21st century king of cycling, loves technology. He embraces it. He uses it nearly all of the time, from power meters, training platforms, simulation, fine-tuned optimization of the edge of what's legal, let's face it. Yes, he is still having to obey regulations. He is now the lightning rod for old-school Irie. In the sections that follow, what we will look at is compare the two worlds, weigh the arguments, and ask, is the tech indeed ruining cycling, or are the legends simply feeling forgotten in a data-obsessed age? Then versus now, tools of the trade. Back then, say 1960s to the 80s, steel frames, lug joints, friction shifters or perhaps early derailleurs, wool jerseys and leather saddles. No power meters, few computers, no internet, no GPS. Riders estimated, guesstimated, and guessed. Radios, well, they were rare or non-existent in early decades. Team directives came from cars or signboards. Nutrition, it was some coffee, wine, sometimes beer, possibly even cigarettes. Tough men, indeed. Recovery, sleep, massages, and maybe some ambiguous tonics. Now, Pogačar's domain in late 2010s and 2020s, We have carbon fiber frames, electronic shifting, aerodynamic optimization, integrated sensors, power meters on both cranks, hubs or pedals. Every second your output is monitored. Then we have training apps, software dashboards, machine learning, data visualization and computer predictions. Radios with live data transmissions, strategic commands to riders in real time. Then, on the recovery side of things, we have recovery tech, like compression boots, cryotherapy, blood tests, altitude tents, and precise fueling. There are marginal gains everywhere, from wheel selection to tyre pressure to wind tunnels, and even vibration damping. Indiran must laugh at that word. The legends would say, in our day, if your toe cramps, you suffer. You don't pause for an app update. And perhaps they are right, in tone, but Pogačar and his contemporaries would reply, fine, but in your day, your aerodynamics were awful, your data was zero, and your margin was enormous. We're just closing the gap that your era left open. For example, Greg LeMond, though he straddles old and new eras, was known as a tinkerer. He embraced carbon fibre, aerobars, cycling computers. In fact, LeMond was among the first pros to race with a cycling computer, heart rate monitor, and early aerodynamic enhancements. So even some, quote, legends weren't entirely against tech, but the mythology loves to paint them all as Luddites. Thus, we have a comedic tension. The legends criticize the modern constraints. You need so many sensors just to pedal uphill. While Pogačar rejoins, you needed so many excuses just to pedal uphill. The tough men era versus the engineered athlete era. Tough men smoke, alcohol, suffering. In the legend's retelling, they rode during the tour with a cigarette in one hand, a flask of something in the other, and the wind in their hair. They were rough men. They grappled with Alps, deserts, heat, rain, mechanical failures, potholes, even wild animals. They endured and they suffered, and they won by muscle and spirit. We might exaggerate, quote, had to carry their own bikes uphill, climb unpaved passes barefoot, and eat a mutton bone between stages. But the truth is, many old riders embraced risk, tolerated discomfort, and accepted the unknown. Support was primitive, equipment failure was common, and they rode by feel, by experience, by guts. Quote, if you break, you don't win, was a boast often attributed to riders like Mario Cipollini in his flamboyant era, though he's later, but it echoes the tone of you either suffer or surrender. The tough men phrasing is part romantic, but also part myth. The legends might imagine telling Pogačar, you don't know how to suffer, you stop and look at your screen. They frown. In your day, suffering was part of your identity. Pogačar, by contrast, is in the era of quantified performance. From the legend's perspective, it sounds like playing with toy tools. From Pogačar's perspective, it sounds like unlocking your full potential. He would contend the modern rider doesn't avoid suffering, they suffer more, but they do it smartly. The old guard would say, win on the road, not on spreadsheets. Pogačar would reply, I just make sure my spreadsheet reflects my road. Arguments, rebuttals, and the clash of eras. The disagreement between the legends and Pogačar is really about two very different visions of what cycling should be. The older generation insists that technology has taken away the rawness of the sport. To them, every new device, the power meter, the GPS unit, the race radio, chips away at the essence of what it means to be a cyclist. They argue that races are now calculated in advance, riders are told when to attack, and outcomes are increasingly shaped by engineers and data analysts rather than instinct and courage. In their view, the romance of cycling lies in its unpredictability, in those moments of sheer bravery where a rider attacks on feel alone. What's your opinion? Comment down below and let me know. Leave a like on today's video for good luck, and subscribe if this is your first time here on my channel to stay up to date with all of the latest cycling news, cycling drama, and of course, all of the latest cycling results.